The Midnight Oil of Leonardo da Vinci. Florence, 1503. Breathed like an ancient beast beyond the high stone walls of the workshop. The stars above the Arno River gleamed in the deep velvet of the Tuscan sky, their silver light scattering upon the quiet city. Inside, a single candle trembled in the darkness, its flame licking the air with the grace of a dancer. Beneath that light, Leonardo da Vinci leaned over a wooden table, quill poised like a soldier before battle. Had been awake for hours days. Perhaps, though, the concept of time to Leonardo was like water cupped in one's hands, fleeting, spilling through fingers without mercy. His eyes, sharp, yet clouded with fatigue, traced the lines of an unfinished sketch, the curve of a smile that would one day haunt centuries. Another hour, perhaps two, he whispered to himself, though there was no one else in the room. The air smelled of oil, paint, parchment, and the faint metallic temps of ground pigments. Somewhere in the streets below, a drunkard sang to the moon, and a stray dog barked in disapproval. Leonardo's life was not bound by the sun's rise or fall. He had crafted his own rhythm, a cycle of sleep as fragmented and deliberate as his brushstrokes. He would work for 4 hours, sleep for 20 minutes, rise again, and continue. A polyphasic dance with exhaustion. His apprentices whispered about it, calling it madness. Yet Leonardo dismissed such mortal concerns with a wave of his hand. To sleep too long is to surrender the hours in which the mind walks freely between earth and heaven, he had once told Salai, the mischievous boy who served as his assistant. On this night, Salai slept in the corner, curled up on a pile of rags, his soft breathing a reminder that ordinary men needed rest. But Leonardo moved like a figure blessed by the gods. His mind, even in exhaustion, burned with visions of flying machines with wings like swans, of cities that floated upon canals, of human anatomy laid bare in elegant precision. He dipped his quill, sketching a mechanism for a clockwork lion that could walk on its own. The candlelight made his hands look carved from marble, every tendon and vein illuminated like the statues of Rome. His eyes darted from the machine's joints to the half-finished Mona Lisa, resting quietly on the easel nearby. She watched him silently, her gaze eternal, as though already aware she would outlive empires. Midnight passed unnoticed. Leonardo worked until his head grew heavy, and then, without ceremony, he rested it upon his folded arms. Sleep took him not like a gentle mother, but like a thief swift, and without warning. 20 minutes later, his eyes opened with the precision of a sundial at noon. He inhaled sharply, as though surfacing from a deep pool, and immediately reached for his pen. Dreams, he believed, were not accidents. They were messages from a realm where truth was naked, and inspiration flowed like wine at a Roman feast. In his dreams, he saw landscapes bathed in golden light, faces he had never met, but somehow loved, machines that spun like the orbits of planets. He would wake and capture them before they dissolved into the mist of memory. "The night belongs to those who dare to claim it," he once wrote in the margins of a notebook. And so he claimed it, night after night, until dawn painted Florence in shades of rose and gold. A visit from the Duke. It was on one such sleepless morning that Duke Cesare Borgia himself arrived at Leonardo's quarters. The Duke, a man wrapped in crimson and shadow, stepped into the room and surveyed the chaos. Maps half finished, sculptures in the making, sketches pinned to the walls like trophies from another world. "Maestro," the Duke said, "do you never sleep?" Leonardo looked up from his work, eyes ringed with shadows but burning with an almost divine fire. "I sleep in pieces, my lord. Enough to keep the body alive, but never so much that the mind grows dull." Borgia laughed, though not entirely in jest. "And yet, it is said even the great Julius Caesar would rest when his body demanded it." Leonardo smiled faintly. "I am not Caesar. I am the servant of time, and time is a cruel master. He gives us but a handful of years, and I will not waste them in slumber." The Duke, perhaps sensing the futility of argument, changed the subject to fortifications and siege engines, for which Leonardo provided designs on the spot. Such was his mind, always awake, even when the body begged for surrender. The weight of wakefulness, but the gods, though generous to men like Leonardo, are never without their cruelty. Years of fragmented sleep etched fine cracks into his health. His hands trembled in the cold, and his thoughts, though still sharp, sometimes wandered like rivers in flood. One night, while sketching the muscles of a human arm, he paused and stared at his own. The candlelight revealed the cords of tendon beneath his skin, the gentle pulse of life moving through him. He thought of mortality, of the fact that even the greatest minds are bound to the same fate as the humblest beggar, yet he did not slow. If anything, he worked harder. For Leonardo da Vinci was not chasing sleep. He was chasing eternity. And somewhere deep within him, he knew the hours he stole from rest would be repaid in the immortality of his creations. Final thought of the segment. In the Roman style of life, where men sought glory through action and the forging of their name upon stone, Leonardo da Vinci forged his in the hours most men surrendered to dreams. But for him, waking was the dream, and he lived it endlessly. He who sleeps too much dies daily. He who sleeps in moments lives forever. The half-dream world of Nikola Tesla, approximately New York City. Winter, 1899, the snow fell like silent ash upon the great city, softening the roar of carriages and the shouts of street vendors. Electric lamps glowed dimly through the veil of white, their light still a novelty to most, but to one man, a mere tool, a toy of infancy. In a room at the top of the Waldorf Astoria, Nikola Tesla sat alone, his tall frame folded into the shadows. His eyes pale, almost otherworldly, stared at a sheet of paper upon which lines, curves and symbols bloomed like constellations in a night sky. The hour was far past midnight, but for Tesla, this was when the world truly began. He had not slept in over 40 hours. His body hummed with a strange energy, a quiet storm of thought that no mortal could calm. Sleep, for him, was not a nightly surrender, but a rare truce, and even then, he granted it grudgingly, in intervals no longer than 2 hours. The mind, he once said, is sharper when the body is not dulled by indulgent slumber. The ritual of wakefulness. Tesla's nights were an intricate ceremony, part science, part mysticism. At dusk, while others dined and drank, he would pace. Long strides, measured as though his very steps were calculating something. He counted them, always. 3 times around the block, never more, never less. Back in his suite, he would remove his gloves and wash his hands with a precision bordering on obsession. Exactly 18 napkin strokes, no deviation. Only then would he sit, the silence so deep one could hear the faint hum of the city's power lines through the walls. Sleep would not come yet. Instead, his thoughts surged like the great rivers of his Serbian homeland in spring flood. He saw machines, not in parts, but whole, moving, alive, as if the heavens themselves had lowered blueprints into his mind. These visions often arrived when his body was near collapse. When the border between dream and wakefulness blurred like ink and water, the visions had began when he was a boy in Smiljan. Feverish from illness, he would see bursts of light, sudden, violent, dazzling, that filled his mind's eye. Shapes emerged within them. Great wheels, pulleys, and spirals, moving in harmony. Most men would dismiss them as the tricks of a sick child's mind, but Tesla knew better. These were glimpses of another realm, where truth wore the garments of lightning. In New York, decades later, those same visions came to him in the quietest hours. He would seize them greedily, sketching the machinery with such speed that ink would splatter across the page like blood from a fresh wound. It was said he could design an entire motor in his head, run it for weeks in his imagination, and identify every flaw before ever touching metal. This, he claimed, was the gift of his strange, half-dreaming state, a realm accessible only when one's body has been pushed past the ordinary demands of sleep. A night at the laboratory one night in the winter of '99, unable to contain his restlessness, Tesla left the Waldorf and made his way through the snow to his laboratory on South Fifth Avenue. The wind clawed at his long coat, but his mind was already inside, already at work. He entered the great room, and darkness greeted him. With a single switch it awoke, the air filling with the ghostly hum of machines. Coils, wires, and glass spheres lined the walls like relics from a forgotten temple. Tesla moved to a large, half-completed device, his new coil. He stroked the copper winding as a priest might touch the altar. His assistants had gone home hours ago, leaving him alone with the silent congregation of machines. With a flick of his hand, sparks leapt to life. They arced across the room, jagged spears of blue and violet, biting at the air with the sound of tearing cloth. The scent of ozone filled the space, sharp and metallic. Tesla closed his eyes and smiled faintly. Here, he murmured to the empty room, is the language of the gods. He worked until his hands shook and his eyes burned until his stomach twisted with hunger. Only then did he allow himself to collapse into the small cot in the corner, where he would sleep no more than 2 hours, just enough for the body to endure another day. The cost of genius this life came at a price. Tesla's face grew pale, almost translucent, and his body, though tall and elegant, was frail as porcelain. His friends worried, but Tesla brushed off their concern. "Sleep is a waste of time," he told one journalist. "I rest only long enough to recharge the mind. The body will follow where the mind leads." Yet there were moments rare and fleeting when the weight of his wakefulness showed. Alone in his suite, he would sometimes sit without moving, his gaze fixed on some unseen horizon. In those moments, he was neither fully awake nor fully asleep, suspended in a strange purgatory between the worlds of men and the gods. An evening with Mark Twain. One evening, the great writer Mark Twain visited Tesla's laboratory. The two men, both insomniacs of a sort, shared a mutual admiration. Twain delighted in the strange wonders of Tesla's machines, while Tesla admired the razor wit and deep melancholy hidden behind the author's humor. "You'll drive yourself into the grave with this habit of yours," Twain said, watching Tesla work long past midnight. Tesla smiled. "And yet, Mr. Clemens, if the grave comes sooner, perhaps I will have seen more of life than those who sleep it away." Twain, for once, found no retort. The immortality of wakefulness in the years to come, Tesla's patterns never truly changed. Even in old age, he slept little. A few hours at night, perhaps a nap in the afternoon, but his mind remained a cathedral of lightning. Some said his insomnia was a curse, others a blessing. Tesla himself would have called it a choice. For in the half-dream world between exhaustion and rest, he had glimpsed the machinery of the universe, and he could no more turn away from it than a sailor could turn from the sea. Final thought of the segment. Like the Roman generals who stood watch through the night to guard their legions, Nikola Tesla kept vigil over his own empire. An empire not of land, but of light electricity and the invisible forces that bind the cosmos. To him, sleep was not an escape, but an enemy, and he conquered it as surely as Caesar conquered Gaul. "I do not sleep," he once said. "I dream while awake." Napoleon's battle with sleep. Approximately 2 Austerlitz. It's winter. 1805, the campfires burned low under a cold sky thick with frost. Thousands of men lay wrapped in tattered blankets, their dreams carrying them away from the smell of gunpowder and damp earth. But in the largest tent, the Emperor of France was not among them. Napoleon Bonaparte stood over a map spread wide across a table, the edges weighed down with pistols and a half-empty goblet of wine. His fingers, short, strong, and restless, traced the rivers, the hills, the enemy lines. Outside, the wind whispered through the canvas like the voice of some ancient general, urging haste. He had slept no more than 2 hours in the last 2 days. His mind, sharp as a drawn sword, refused to yield to fatigue. For Napoleon, sleep was an indulgence for soldiers, not for emperors. "You can sleep when the campaign is over," he once told Marshal Berthier, "or in the grave, whichever comes first." The emperor's patterned Napoleon's sleep came in bursts, as unpredictable as the man himself. An hour after midnight, perhaps a short doze before dawn, another while riding in a carriage. Each moment stolen from the grasp of exhaustion. Could wake from the deepest slumber in an instant, issuing orders before his eyes had fully opened. It was said he could fall asleep anywhere, a chair, a wagon, even the floor of a farmhouse, and wake 15 minutes later as though he had just returned from a week-long rest. His soldiers marveled at it. "The emperor," they whispered, "does not sleep like other men. He sleeps like a lion when it pleases him, and never for long." The night before Austerlitz, on the eve of one of his greatest victories, the so-called Battle of the Three Emperors, Napoleon's tent was a theater of movement. Aides came and went, their boots crunching on frozen ground. Berthier brought fresh reports from the scouts. Murat, His cavalry plumes, trembling in the wind, delivered word of the enemy's shifting formations. "Let them come," Napoleon said, not looking up from the map. "Tomorrow. We will break them before the sun has risen twice." At last, the tent emptied. The candle burned low. Napoleon sank into his campaign bed, a simple cot of wood and canvas. His head barely touched the pillow before his breathing slowed. 20 minutes later, his eyes opened. Without hesitation, he reached for the map again. He had dreamed briefly of a sea of fog, and in it, the silhouettes of soldiers moving like ghosts. He took it as an omen. The weather tomorrow would favor him. War on the march. Napoleon's armies moved like a single living creature. Quick, adaptable, relentless. Part of that came from their leader's own refusal to rest. On long marches, Napoleon would ride ahead, stopping only for a bite of bread or a short nap in the saddle. His body swayed with the rhythm of the horse, eyes closed, mind working silently over strategy. He was never far from his troops. Soldiers would awaken in the middle of the night to find him standing among them, asking about their rations, their wounds, their spirits. Some swore he could tell when a man had deserted simply by the way the campfire burned. The Spanish campaign in Spain, where the war turned bitter and the mountains hid as many enemies as they revealed. Napoleon's sleep grew even scarcer. Reports came at all hours, and the emperor answered them all. One aide recalled finding him at 3 a.m, fully dressed, pen in hand. "Do you never sleep, sire?" the aide asked. Napoleon smiled faintly. "When I do, I am no longer Napoleon. The price of wakefulness, yet the body, no matter how disciplined, is still flesh and blood." Years of campaigning wore him down. In later battles, his short bursts of sleep sometimes gave way to sudden weariness. At Waterloo, some claimed he seemed slower, more distracted. His once boundless energy dulled. Still, he never admitted it. To the end, he maintained that sleep was a resource to be rationed, not a necessity to be indulged. An emperor's philosophy. For Napoleon, the night was not a time for rest, but for conquest. Of maps, of ideas, of the enemy's will. His relationship with sleep was not one of surrender, but of negotiation. "A man's time is worth more than his dreams," he once told a young officer. "If you must dream, dream while waking." Final thought of the segment. Like the Roman consuls who planned campaigns by torchlight, Napoleon Bonaparte fought battles both on the field and in the shadows of sleepless nights. His empire rose and fell on the back of his restless mind, a mind that refused to close its eyes for long. "I wake," he said, "and the world moves with me." Einstein's Catnap Universe, Berlin, 1920. The rain whispered against the windows of the modest study, each drop a tiny drumbeat in the quiet night.
Albert.
Inside, Albert Einstein sat slouched in an armchair, pipe in hand, hair like a halo of untamed silver. His eyes, dark and heavy-lidded, followed the thin spirals of smoke, as if they were galaxies unwinding in slow motion. The city slept. The world outside his mind was silent. But inside, the universe roared. On his lap lay a notepad, pages covered with numbers and loops of handwriting. Somewhere between one equation and the next, his head tilted forward. His breathing slowed. In moments he was gone, not into the deep, dreamless abyss most call sleep, but into a fragile, in-between state. This was Einstein's way. Catnaps, scattered across the day and night like constellations in an uncharted sky. 10 minutes here, 15 there, never so much that the mind's embers cooled. The spark of relativity, Einstein once confessed, that some of his best ideas arrived in this twilight state, where thought floated free from the rigid rails of logic. Years earlier, while working at the Swiss patent office, he would rest his eyes between stacks of files, slipping briefly into that half-dream realm. In those moments, the world of trains, clocks, and light beams seemed to bend and merge in impossible ways. One afternoon he saw, or thought he saw, himself riding alongside a beam of light. The world around him frozen, time itself stretched thin. It was a vision that would haunt him until he could explain it. He would later say, "A discovery is often nothing more than the sudden marriage of dreams and reality." The key and the nap to catch himself before slipping into full sleep, Einstein had a peculiar trick. He would sit in a chair holding a heavy key loosely between his fingers. Below his hand, he placed a metal tray. When his muscles relaxed and the key fell, the clang would wake him instantly. Whatever dream fragments remained, he would seize them like a fisherman pulling a silver flash from the water. It was in this liminal state, not awake, not asleep, that he believed the mind was most receptive to the truths hidden beneath everyday thought, life in intervals. Einstein's days were shaped by rhythms few could follow. Mornings began late. He often slept through the hours others reserved for work. Afternoons were devoted to reading, teaching, or leisurely walks by the lake. Evenings brought long conversations with friends, music on the violin, and sudden bursts of calculation scribbled on scraps of paper. But at any hour, if fatigue brushed against him, he surrendered to a nap without hesitation. He might sleep for 12 minutes at his desk, wake, pour tea, and resume his work as if no time had passed. His wife, Elsa, often joked that Albert didn't live in hours or days, but in moments of thinking, the Princeton years. By the time Einstein settled in Princeton in the 1930s, his catnap habit was well known among colleagues. Graduate students would sometimes find him in the library, head resting on a book, snoring softly. They learned to wait. In 10 minutes, he would open his eyes and begin explaining some subtle point of quantum theory, as if the nap had been part of the lecture. To Einstein, rest was not a retreat, but a tool. It sharpened the edge of his thought, kept him from slipping into the dull monotony that came with long hours of unbroken work. The dream of the compass Einstein often spoke of a dream from his childhood. In it, he held a compass and felt a mysterious pull, an invisible force guiding the needle. That dream, he said, planted the seed for his lifelong fascination with unseen laws of nature. Perhaps it was dreams like these, fleeting, fragile, yet deeply real, that taught him to value the space between waking and sleeping. In those spaces, the universe whispered. An afternoon by the river. One summer afternoon in Princeton, Einstein sat on a bench by the Delaware River, eyes closed, face tilted toward the sun. A friend approached quietly, not wanting to disturb him. After a few minutes, Einstein opened his eyes. "I've been thinking," he said softly, "about how time might look from the edge of a black hole." His friend laughed. "While you were napping?" Einstein smiled. "Exactly. The mind works best when the body pretends to rest." The eternal catnap in the final years of his life, Einstein's naps became more frequent, though never longer. Visitors would find him drifting in and out of sleep during conversations, only to return with a sudden, piercing question that revealed he had been listening all along. He left behind equations unfinished, letters unanswered, and a world forever changed by the visions he caught between moments of rest. Final thought of the segment. Like a Roman philosopher reclining in the atrium between debates, Albert Einstein treated sleep not as surrender, but as a gateway. In his brief catnaps, he touched the infinite, bringing back fragments of eternity wrapped in equations. "I live," he once said, "in the space between dream and reality, and it is there the universe reveals itself." Churchill's Wartime Naps, London, 1940. The air in the underground war rooms was thick with smoke and the weight of history. Maps stretched across the walls, seas and continents shaded in the colors of empires in peril. Outside, the city above groaned under the drone of enemy bombers. Yet deep below, in a small side chamber, Winston Churchill, First Lord of the British was fast asleep. He lay on a narrow bed, boots off but waistcoat still buttoned, one arm folded under his head. The faint rumble of distant bombs was like the purring of some great mechanical beast. A glass of brandy rested on the nightstand, untouched. It was not midnight, nor the dead of morning. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Churchill was taking what he considered one of the most vital acts of war, his nap. The power of the afternoon, Churchill believed fiercely in the value of rest. Not long, luxurious nights, but a calculated pause in the middle of the day. To him it was not laziness, but strategy. "You must sleep during the day," he once told an aide, "if you are to fight into the night." In those years, Britain's war never slept. The Prime Minister's nights were spent in council meetings, radio broadcasts, and inspections of bomb damage. His mornings were often consumed by letters, speeches, and visits to Parliament. The nap, usually an hour or two after lunch, was the bridge that allowed him to cross from one battlefield of work into the next. The wartime routine. Churchill's day was a strange, rolling tide. He would rise late, often working from bed in a silk dressing gown, dictating letters between sips of tea. He might not emerge until midday, when his meetings began in earnest. Then, without fail, he would withdraw after lunch. The government learned to plan around it. The empire could pause for one man's rest. Ministers might wait outside the door, knowing they would soon face a refreshed and razor-sharp Churchill. His nap was always in a bed, never in a chair, never on a couch. He insisted on undressing down to his underclothes as if preparing for a proper night's rest. To him, this was no casual doze. It was a ceremony of renewal. War above, sleep below. One afternoon, in the darkest days of the Blitz, the sirens wailed across London. Civilians rushed to shelters, anti-aircraft guns barked into the clouds, and enemy planes roared overhead. He was asleep. His staff hesitated. Should they wake him? An aide finally did, bursting into the room. "Prime Minister, the Luftwaffe is over London." Churchill sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Good," he said calmly. "Then we know where they are." And he lay back down. Half an hour later, he emerged in full uniform, hair combed, voice thundering with orders. The nap had done its work. The lion was ready to roar again. The Atlantic crossing, even aboard warships and in foreign capitals, Churchill kept his habit. In 1941, crossing the Atlantic to meet with President Roosevelt, he astonished the Americans by retiring each afternoon to his cabin for a full rest. Roosevelt's aides whispered about the eccentricity, but by evening, Churchill was still at the table, cigar in hand, arguing strategy well past midnight while his hosts wilted in their chairs. "That is why I nap," he told them, "so that I may work when others tire." A lesson from history. Churchill knew the value of precedent. Roman generals, he liked to note, often rested before battle so that their minds were sharp when the fighting began. Napoleon himself was known to steal moments of sleep on campaign. Churchill placed himself in that lineage, a leader who could command both the hours of daylight and the shadows of night. It's the private benefit. But it was not only strategy. Churchill took personal pleasure in his naps. In that hour of quiet, he could escape the strain of war, if only briefly. He would lie in darkness, mind drifting to gardens, childhood memories, or the rhythm of waves against a ship's hull. When he awoke, the burdens returned, but so did the strength to carry them. The victory habit. Even after the war, Churchill kept the ritual. Friends and staff grew used to his midday disappearances. The man who had rallied a nation with speeches and stubborn defiance had, in truth, fought much of the war in two shifts, morning and night, separated by a sacred hour of sleep. Nature has not intended man to work from 8 in the morning until midnight without the refreshment of blessed oblivion, he once wrote. Final thought of the segment. In the long corridors of power, where exhaustion dulls the mind and war wears at the soul, Winston Churchill's naps were more than a luxury. They were a weapon. Like a Roman consul resting before addressing the Senate, he knew that to command the night, one must first conquer the afternoon. "You will be able to accomplish more," he said, "and you will be better able to fight." The coffee-fueled nights of Balzac, Paris, 1830, beneath the gaslit streets of the City of Light. A solitary figure sat hunched over a battered wooden desk, a sea of parchments scattered before him. The faint aroma of roasted coffee beans hung thick in the air, mingling with the scent of ink and candle smoke. It was the domain of de Balzac, a man possessed by the fever of creation, driven not by day, but by the restless shadows of night. His eyes, dark and sunken, flickered with the urgency of a man haunted. The world around him had long surrendered to sleep. Yet Balzac's quill danced tirelessly across the pages, weaving tales of Parisian life with the precision of a master sculptor chiseling marble. The elixir of night. Balzac's relationship with sleep was a paradox as complex as his novels. To rest meant to halt the torrent of ideas flooding his mind, a sacrifice he refused to make. Instead, he relied on his sacred brew, countless cups of thick black coffee brewed strong enough to ignite the soul. Coffee is the lifeblood of the artist, he declared to a friend, who looked on with both admiration and alarm. Nights blurred into mornings as Balzac consumed the bitter liquid in endless gulps, each cup a chalice fueling his frenzy. The hours were punctuated by the scratch of pen on paper and the hiss of water boiling for yet another pot. His servants, long accustomed to his nocturnal rituals, whispered tales of Balzac's ceaseless energy, of the man who drank more coffee than water, and whose very heartbeat seemed to echo the ticking of the city's clocks. The marathon of creation. It was said that Balzac sometimes wrote for up to 20 hours straight, pausing only to refill his cup or scribble a note to himself. His desk, a battlefield strewn with crumpled drafts and ink-stained gloves, bore witness to this relentless pursuit. The candlelight flickered and waned as dawn approached, but Balzac's spirit remained unyielding. He poured every ounce of his being into crafting characters who lived and breathed the tumult of society. The ambitious, the downtrodden, the dreamers and deceivers. The toll of the night, yet the price of such devotion was heavy. Balzac's health waned beneath the weight of his sleepless nights. His hands trembled with exhaustion, his once robust frame growing thin and frail. Doctors warned him, pleading for rest and moderation. But Balzac waved them away, convinced that every minute awake was a minute earned in the fight against oblivion. Sleep is the enemy of the diligent, he insisted, eyes blazing with conviction. To dream while awake is the true art. The legend of the De La Paix. Legend has it that Balzac's love affair with coffee began at the famed De La Paix, where he would spend hours scribbling notes between sips of the dark brew. The cafe's flickering lamps and murmurs of fellow patrons formed the backdrop to his burgeoning genius. In those moments, Balzac was both spectator and playwright of the bustling city. A man who drank deeply, not only from his cup, but from the endless well of human experience. The final chapters, despite warnings, Balzac's relentless pace continued until the end. His final days were marked by exhaustion and torment, yet even then he clung to his cups of coffee and his precious pen. He died in 1850, leaving behind an enormous body of work that forever changed the face of French literature. His secret, whispered in the shadows of Parisian nights, was simple and brutal, a mind unwilling to rest, fueled by coffee and obsession. Final thought of the segment. In the grand theater of human creativity, de Balzac stands as a testament to the power and peril of sleepless devotion. Like a Roman bard, pouring his soul into epic verse by flickering torchlight, Balzac burned the midnight oil, fueled by bitter coffee, capturing the spirit of a restless age. Better to write awake in the night than to sleep and dream of nothing, he might have said. The Dream Journals of Salvador Figueres, Spain. 1930. The moon hung low and swollen over the Mediterranean sky, casting silver light upon the narrow streets of Figueres. In a small, cluttered room, filled with clocks melting into strange shapes and canvases bursting with impossible creatures, Salvador sat poised between wakefulness and the abyss of sleep. His eyes fluttered, heavy yet burning with feverish intent. A candle guttered on the windowsill, its flame dancing like a spirit caught between worlds, clutched a pen in one hand and a worn leather journal in the other. His sacred dream book, a vessel for visions born in the half-light of night. The threshold between worlds. Believed that true art lived in the twilight realm, the space between waking and dreaming. He sought to seize those fleeting moments when the mind drifts from logic into the boundless landscape of the unconscious. To do this, he invented a ritual both strange and profound. Sitting in an armchair, he would hold a heavy key between his fingers, a metal bowl at his feet. As his body relaxed, the key would slip from his grasp and clang against the bowl, waking him instantly from the doorway of sleep. In that instant, before the dreams dissolved into forgetfulness, would reach for his journal, racing to capture the raw fragments of his subconscious. The birth of surrealism. It was in these half-waking moments that S. genius was forged. Visions of clocks melting like wax, elephants on spindly legs, and deserts made of liquid glass. These images would later become the icons of surrealism, a movement that sought to shatter the boundaries of reality. Once described this process as hand-painted dream photographs, immortalizing the fleeting shadows that dance in the mind's dark chambers. The sleep of the madman friends whispered of his eccentricities, his refusal to conform to the rhythms of ordinary life. While others slept in long stretches, he embraced a fragmented rest, a series of naps and brief slumbers that kept his mind in a constant state of flux. Some called it madness, called it method. Believe that. To truly see, one must border on delirium. A night of vision on one particular night, dreamed of a vast landscape where ants marched across a giant melting watch. He awoke with a start, seized his journal, and sketched feverishly until dawn. That painting, the persistence of memory, would become a timeless symbol of the fluidity of time and perception. The artist's dialogue with sleep, as dance with sleep, was a conversation, sometimes tender, sometimes violent, between control and chaos. He sought to master his dreams, to wield them like weapons and tools in his artistic arsenal. In this way, sleep was not a retreat, but a battleground, where the real and unreal collided in spectacular form. Final thought of the segment: in the grand tapestry of creation, Salvador's journey reveals the sacred power of the liminal space between sleep and waking. Like a Roman seer interpreting the stars, he captured the fleeting whispers of the unconscious, transforming dreams into eternal art. To awaken the mind, he might say, one must first sleep the sleep of madness. Marie Curie's tireless nights, Paris. 1903, the dim glow of gas lamps flickered against the stained glass. Windows of a modest laboratory tucked away in the heart of Paris. Within this sanctum of science and discovery, Marie Curie moved silently, her hands steady, despite the late hour and the exhaustion etched deeply into her face. Around her, glass vials shimmered with faintly luminescent powders, the mysterious substances that had captured her heart and mind. Radium, glowing like the embers of a divine fire, pulsed softly in its containment.
The night's vigil.
Marie's nights were a testament to relentless devotion. While the city above lay cloaked in sleep, she remained at her bench, measuring, mixing, and meticulously recording. The world demanded progress, and she would not yield to the temptation of rest. One must pay the price, she once murmured to her husband Pierre, for knowledge demands sacrifice. Her sleep was a stranger, brief and fragmented. Sometimes it came as stolen moments between experiments. A few quiet minutes on a worn wooden stool, head bowed over notebooks filled with calculations and observations. The glow of discovery in 1898, the discovery of polonium and radium, marked a revolution. The very air in her laboratory seemed charged with the breath of new knowledge. Yet this brilliance came with shadows, the toll of long nights, the creeping illness that would later claim her life, the solitude of a path few dared to walk. Still, Marie pressed on, driven by an unquenchable thirst to unravel the secrets of the atom. The balance of mind and body, her tireless nights were balanced by moments of reflection and brief repose. When fatigue threatened to overwhelm her, she would retreat to a small garden outside the university, inhaling the cool Parisian air, allowing herself the luxury of a few deep breaths before returning to the glow of her laboratory. Her colleagues marveled at her endurance. Few could match her stamina. Fewer still understood the cost. Legacy of light. The sleepless nights bore fruit beyond measure. 2 Nobel Prizes, one in physics and one in chemistry, crowned her pioneering work. Yet these laurels were hard-won, their shine dimmed by the shadows of exhaustion and illness. In the quiet hours, Marie Curie's mind never rested. It was a crucible of discovery, where the flame of curiosity burned ever bright, consuming sleep itself as fuel. Final thought of the segment: in the annals of history, Marie Curie stands as a luminous beacon, a woman whose tireless nights unveiled the hidden energies of the world. Like the Roman Vestal virgins tending sacred fires, she guarded the flame of knowledge, her sacrifices etched into the very fabric of science. Sleep, she might say, is a guest I greet briefly, for the pursuit of truth cannot wait. Mozart's Restless Symphony, Vienna. 1787, the flickering candlelight cast elongated shadows across the polished wooden floor of a modest chamber in Vienna. Amidst the quiet hush of night, a young Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart sat at his clavier, his fingers poised yet trembling, his mind a whirlwind of melodies yet to be born. The city slept, but Mozart's spirit was alive with restless energy, a tempest of sound and silence. a symphony stirring in the depths of his soul. The maestro's night Mozart's relationship with sleep was as complex and vibrant as his compositions. Though he could slumber deeply, the grip of inspiration often held him captive well into the night. His pen racing across sheets of manuscript paper, capturing the fugues and arias that danced just beyond waking. He was known to work until dawn, eyes shining with feverish delight, to rise early and continue composing, as if time itself bowed to his will. Dreams and music. Legend tells that Mozart's greatest works were born from dreams, visions of heavenly harmonies and celestial choirs that visited him in the quiet hours. One such dream revealed the complete score of his magic flute, a gift from the muses that he transcribed with urgency upon waking, the toll of genius. But this relentless pursuit came with a cost. Exhaustion crept behind his genial smile, and his health waned under the burden of sleepless nights and endless creation. His friends worried, urging rest. Mozart would only laugh, declaring that music was life itself, and to sleep was to silence the song. The final movement in the last year of his life, Mozart's nights grew darker and more haunted. Yet even as illness tightened its grip, his hand never ceased to write, crafting the Requiem. A somber farewell, etched in notes of mortality and transcendence. His restless nights, filled with fevered composition and fleeting rest, became the canvas upon which his eternal masterpiece was painted. Final thought of the segment. Like a Roman bard singing beneath the moonlight, Mozart transformed the boundary between sleep and wakefulness into a stage for divine creativity. His restless nights became the symphony of genius, a timeless melody echoing through the ages. Sleep may claim the body, he might say, but the music never dies. Tesla's Electrical Vigil, New York City, 1901. The city hummed beneath a velvet night sky, a symphony of lights and whispers. At the pinnacle of a towering building, Nikola Tesla sat alone amid coils and wires, the air alive with crackling energy. His eyes shone with an unnatural light, a mind electrified, ceaseless, never resting. While others succumbed to the embrace of sleep, he pursued the secrets of the universe with the intensity of a Roman sentinel guarding the empire's walls. The master of wakefulness, Tesla's relationship with sleep was a battle. He claimed to need no more than 2 hours in a day, taking short, fragmented rests that barely touched the surface of slumber. His mind operated on a plane beyond ordinary men, perceiving patterns and frequencies invisible to others. To him, sleep was a thief, stealing precious moments from the pursuit of discovery. The lightning within Tesla's nights were spent in the glow of electric arcs, his laboratory a cathedral of light and sound. Each spark a hymn to progress, each pulse a testament to the power of human will. He paced for hours, sometimes counting steps, sometimes speaking to himself in a language only he understood, a ritual of concentration and creation. Visions in the night. During these vigils, Tesla experienced vivid visions, blueprints of machines yet unbuilt. Waves of energy cascading through the air, the very fabric of reality bending before his eyes. These visions fueled his genius but drained his body, leaving him a fragile vessel of immense intellect. The price of the storm, Tesla's relentless wakefulness, took its toll. Friends and colleagues expressed concern, but he dismissed their warnings, convinced that the boundaries of human potential lay beyond the need for sleep. His life was a constant struggle between the body's demands and the mind's insatiable hunger for knowledge. Final thought of the segment. Like a Roman watchman guarding the empire through the darkest hours, Nikola Tesla's electrical vigil illuminated the path to the future. His restless nights and fleeting sleep were the forge upon which modern science was hammered into shape. Sleep, he said, is for the weak. I dream with open eyes. Da Vinci's Renaissance, slumbers Florence, Italy, 1503, beneath the frescoed ceilings of a modest workshop. Leonardo da Vinci sat surrounded by sketches of flying machines, anatomical studies, and enigmatic symbols. The candlelight flickered, casting dancing shadows on walls adorned with dreams made flesh. Leonardo's mind was a tempest, ever turning, never at rest. Sleep was a fleeting visitor, arriving in brief and fragmented moments, before retreating once more to leave the master alone with his restless thoughts. The polyphasic dreamer Da Vinci is said to have embraced a unique sleep pattern, the polyphasic sleep cycle, dividing the night into multiple short naps, rather than a single long slumber. This approach, legend claims, granted him up to 20 hours of wakefulness daily, a treasure trove of time for creation. His days were a kaleidoscope of art, science, and invention, each moment seized with ravenous hunger. The burden of genius, yet the price was steep. His body, though powerful, was pushed to the brink. Friends noted his occasional bouts of exhaustion, his eyes heavy, yet alight with unspent ideas. Leonardo seemed to exist between worlds, one foot in reality, the other in the boundless realm of possibility. A night with the Mona Lisa one night, as moonlight bathed the Tuscan hills, Leonardo paused before a canvas. His brush hovered above the delicate face of the Mona Lisa, a smile caught between mystery and eternity. Sleep threatened to claim him, but he resisted, capturing the subtle shadows and light that would forever haunt art history. The renaissance of rest Da Vinci's fragmented sleep was not mere eccentricity but a deliberate choice, a sacrifice made to stretch the fabric of time and capture more of life. In this, he was like the Roman architects who labored by torchlight, building monuments that would outlast empires. Final thought of the segment: Leonardo da Vinci. Restless nights forged the Renaissance, a brilliant blaze of art and science born from fragmented slumber and endless curiosity. His unique sleep was a crucible where genius and discipline entwined. "I have offended God and mankind," he once said, "because my work did not reach the quality it should have had." Yet it was in those restless nights that he carved eternity. Edison's sleepless empire, Menlo Park, New Jersey. 1880, the workshop buzzed with the ceaseless clatter of machines, the crackle of sparks, and the scratch of pencil on blueprint. Amongst this chaos stood Thomas Edison, a man whose mind was a furnace of invention, burning day and night. Sleep was a fleeting intruder in Edison's relentless quest to illuminate the world. His nights were often spent in the company of flickering bulbs and worry phonographs, his thoughts racing far beyond the limits of ordinary men. The short-nap philosopher Edison was known for his peculiar approach to rest. Rather than seeking long slumbers, he favored brief naps, catnaps, that rejuvenated his energy without surrendering precious hours to sleep. He would sit in a chair holding ball bearings in his hands, poised to wake at the slightest drop. This technique allowed him to maximize wakefulness while harnessing the restorative power of brief rest. A mind without cease. His factory was a hive of activity, humming like a Roman forge, where ideas were hammered into reality with relentless precision. Edison's insomnia was both curse and blessing, pushed him beyond human limits, but also unlocked inventions that changed the modern world. The incandescent bulb, the motion picture camera, and the phonograph. The empire of invention. Edison once said, "I never did a day's work in my life. It was all fun. Yet beneath the joy was a warrior's discipline." Every sleepless night was a battle in a campaign to bring light to darkness. His empire was built not on endless sleep, but on the fuel of tireless curiosity and strategic rest. Final thought of the segment: Thomas Edison's sleepless empire was forged in the fires of unyielding determination and brief moments of slumber. Like a Roman engineer laboring to erect aqueducts, his restless nights channeled the power of innovation into timeless marvels. "Sleep is a waste of time," he might declare, "unless it is the brief pause before victory." The Midnight Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Rome, 170 AD. Beneath the towering columns of the imperial palace, the city of Rome lay cloaked in silence, save for the soft rustle of silk and parchment. In a chamber lit only by the flickering flame of an oil lamp, Emperor Marcus Aurelius sat alone, his eyes fixed upon a worn scroll. The world outside was vast and tumultuous, yet here, in the solitude of night, the Stoic ruler wrestled with his thoughts, reflections that would become the timeless meditations. The emperor's vigil, Marcus Aurelius' nights, were not given to idle rest. Instead, they were a sacred time for reflection and self-examination. Amid the quiet darkness, he grappled with the burdens of empire and the frailty of human life. It is said he often arose in the dead of night, not from torment, but from purpose, to write, to reason, and to steel his mind against despair. The Stoics' rest, unlike many, Marcus did not seek comfort in sleep. His rest was measured and deliberate, designed to preserve clarity and strength. He believed that the mind must remain vigilant, that the soul must prepare for the inevitable struggles of dawn. Riding through the night in the soft glow of lamplight, Marcus penned his thoughts on virtue, duty, and the nature of existence. His words were not meant for the world, but for himself, a guide to living with honor amidst chaos. The emperor's reflections reveal a man who found wisdom not in dreams, but in the conscious act of awakening to life's realities. A legacy beyond time. Marcus Aurelius's midnight meditations echo through the ages as a beacon of resilience and wisdom. His discipline in balancing duty and rest stands as a testament to the power of conscious living. Final thought of the segment. Like a Roman sentinel guarding the soul's gates, Marcus Aurelius' nights were a fortress of thought and resolve. In the silence of midnight, he found the strength to rule both empire and self. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be, he might say, be one. The Marathon Nights of Hemingway, Paris. 1925. Beneath the gas lamps and smoky of Paris's left bank, Ernest Hemingway sat hunched over a battered typewriter, fingers flying across the keys with the urgency of a Roman legionary charging into battle. The night stretched endlessly before him, a canvas for words, a battlefield for ideas. While the city's artists and poets succumbed to slumber, Hemingway embraced the night as his ally, forging stories from the raw material of experience and emotion. The writer's restlessness, Hemingway's nights were marked by fierce bursts of writing, punctuated by moments of wandering the quiet streets or sitting alone in a dim cafe, drink in hand. Sleep was a brief and often unwelcome visitor, displaced by the urgency to capture truth and beauty on the page. He believed that the night unlocked a deeper well of creativity, unburdened by the distractions of daylight. The discipline of the wordsmith, despite his sometimes wild reputation, Hemingway was a man of discipline. He maintained a ritual of writing every morning, but the nights were where he wrestled with his demons, revising, rethinking, and refining his craft until the early hours. His restless nights were both crucible and sanctuary, where the raw and the refined met in a relentless pursuit of perfection. The toll of the night, this marathon of creativity, took its toll. Friends noted the deep shadows under his eyes, the weariness that clung to his frame, yet Hemingway pressed on, convinced that the sacrifices of sleepless nights were the price of true artistry. Final thought of the segment. Like a Roman poet chanting beneath the stars, Ernest Hemingway's marathon nights forged timeless tales of courage, loss, and human spirit. His restless creativity was the anvil upon which his legacy was hammered. Write hard and clear about what hurts, he might say, and keep the lamp burning. The sleep secrets unveiled. A conclusion, the eternal agora of minds. From the marble halls of ancient Rome to the flickering lamplight of modern laboratories, the greatest minds of history have shared a secret. Sleep is not merely a surrender to rest, but a crucible for creativity, insight, and power. As we conclude this epic journey through the sleep habits of luminaries, we stand in the eternal agora where their spirits converse. Aristotle's measured wisdom, Einstein's fleeting catnaps, Churchill's strategic pauses, Balzac's coffee-fueled vigils, and beyond. The dance of rest and wakefulness. Across centuries, pattern emerges. These titans understood that sleep is not a uniform force, but a dance between rest and wakefulness, a balance between surrender and control. Whether through segmented slumber, brief naps, or fragmented rests, they mastered the art of harnessing the mind's most fertile moments, the twilight realms where ideas blossom and visions take shape. The paradox of sleep, paradoxically, is both a thief and a giver. It steals time but gifts clarity, dims the senses but illuminates the unconscious. Each figure embraced this paradox in their own way, some stealing minutes in midday shadows, others battling insomnia with willpower or caffeine. What united them was a profound respect for the mind's rhythms and an unyielding commitment to their craft. Lessons from the Titans. What can we learn from these great souls? Embrace the power of naps. Strategic rest can recharge creativity and resilience. Honor your unique rhythms. There is no one-size-fits-all sleep. Find the pattern that fuels your genius. Value the space between waking and sleeping. The liminal moments hold keys to insight and innovation. Balance, discipline, and surrender. Push the mind, but know when to rest. A call to modern minds in an age of constant distraction and endless demands. These ancient secrets beckon us to reconsider our relationship with sleep, to reclaim the sanctity of rest, not as weakness, but as a strategic tool, a sacred ritual to awaken the dormant powers within. Final reflection as the sun sets on our journey. Remember this: the greatest minds did not conquer the world by denying sleep, but by mastering it. They danced with dreams and harnessed the night, and so can we. Warning: this content has been generated with the assistance of artificial intelligence, AI. While every effort has been made to ensure accuracy and quality, some information or phrasing may be automatically produced. Please use this material responsibly and verify any critical details independently.